high-level military base descends into panic when a Chinese delegation arrives unannounced, without a translator, without protocol, and without warning. Just when tensions hit a breaking point, a quiet janitor named Erica Murphy does the unthinkable. She doesn't just speak Mandarin. She speaks it like someone trained to deceive with it. The room freezes, officers stare, and the question no one thought to ask before becomes impossible to ignore. Who is she really? What happens next will challenge everything they thought they knew about service, silence, and secrets. Before we go any further, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're tuning in from, and be sure to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's story will leave you speechless. Erica Murphy kept her head down, her steps quiet, her routine flawless. Every movement was intentional, wiping down the reinforced glass panels of Corridor C, emptying the trash bins outside the secure comms room, aligning the supply cart just out of the security camera's blind spots. She didn't hum, didn't sigh, didn't make unnecessary noise. The uniform she wore, a government-issued olive green coverall one size too big, hung off her frame like a curtain, disguising everything about her. Shape, presence, purpose. She was invisible. At least, that's what everyone assumed. Her ID badge bore no rank, just a barcode, a name, and a number. The low-tier civilian clearance level meant no one looked twice, not even when she passed secure doors or walked through biometric gates that were supposed to restrict movement. But she timed things carefully, always during shift changes when a wave of exhausted personnel moved en masse, badge swiping and eye scanning while barely conscious. No one noticed when a janitor blended in behind 3 uniformed officers. No one paid attention when she lingered outside intel briefing rooms, adjusting the position of a mop bucket while memorizing everything on the displays inside. No one ever asked her where she came from, or why her eyes flicked so quickly between screen reflections and shoulder patches. Erica liked it that way. She paused near the vending machine by Corridor D, the one that always flickered and ate coins but never got reported. A minor maintenance problem, probably not worth the paperwork, but it had been malfunctioning for 3 weeks now. She crouched beside it, pulled a small Allen key from her pocket, and removed the bottom panel in one swift motion. Her fingers worked quickly through the tangle of wires, adjusted one, pinched another. Click. The power stuttered, surged, and then stabilized. The machine blinked to life. The light inside hummed. She pressed B5. The soda dropped. As she stood, a voice echoed down the hallway. "Sir, it's not on the manifest, I swear." Erica didn't turn her head. She recognized the voice. Captain Daniel Mercer. Freshly promoted, still tight in the shoulders and overly loud on the phone. "They're already in the air, landing in 20 minutes. No protocol, no translator." The last word made Erica pause. She moved silently toward the corridor junction and leaned the mop handle against the wall. Her gaze followed Mercer as he rushed past, red in the face, clutching his tablet like it was a lifeline. He didn't notice her. They never did. He barked a few more curses into his earpiece before disappearing into the operations wing, his footsteps swallowed by the reinforced flooring. A soft mechanical chirp sounded overhead. One of the corridor cameras shifted angle, the lens adjusting slightly. Erica didn't look up. She'd memorized all 6 positions in its rotation weeks ago. She moved only when the motor groaned to the left, blind spot opening wide like a curtain at just the right time. Behind a security door labeled restricted, command access only, voices argued in clipped, anxious bursts. "You're telling me the interpreter left for Quantico this morning? Family emergency, his daughter, Abbott." That voice belonged to General Thomas Rourke. Sharp, pressurized. A man who'd built his entire career on order, predictability, and a chain of command. This was not part of the chain. Erica leaned her shoulder gently against the wall, angled toward the vent overhead. The grating was loose, she knew that. The acoustics funneled sound into the hallway below, like a whispering gallery. You expect me to greet a senior-level Chinese delegation with Google Translate? Rourke's voice again, frustrated, dangerous. A second voice, lower, younger. Lieutenant Josh Raymond. Sir, I've been practicing Mandarin. I can try. You can try, Rourke growled. What are you going to do? Try not to start a diplomatic incident? Erica blinked slowly. Mandarin. That explained the flustered pace. That explained the complete unraveling of morning protocol. She turned and rolled her cart back toward the junction, slipping quietly past a pair of junior officers lost in their own shuffle of folders and briefings. Down another hallway, she reached the janitorial supply closet. It was technically off-limits to anyone but her and the other two contractors who rotated night shifts. They never talked. One was always asleep during the other's hours. Perfect. She stepped inside, shut the door. The hume of the hallway vanished. In the darkness, she moved past the shelves of bleach, gloves, and microfiber towels and reached behind the rack of plastic buckets. Hidden in the hollow wall, behind a vented panel, was a sealed metal case. Her handprint unlocked it. No beeps, no lights. Inside were 3 items. A notebook filled with characters and phrases. Burner phone that hadn't been turned on in over 4 years. And a black flash drive shaped like a pen cap. Erica didn't touch them. She just looked for a moment. Then closed the case. Resealed the wall. She didn't need them. Not yet. Outside, the hallway buzzed with energy, fast footsteps, rapid orders. The Chinese delegation had accelerated their visit by over a week. That wasn't random. Not in the diplomatic world. That was a move. And General Rourke had been caught flat-footed. Erica opened the closet door again. She adjusted her cart, rechecked her gloves, then stepped back into the hallway just in time to watch a full security escort move past. 7 men, suited, wired, armed. Behind them, a figure in a dark overcoat and a red tie, his features unreadable, followed by 2 aides carrying black briefcases, and 1 woman with an unreadable stare. Minister Zhang Wei. She recognized him immediately. Not from the news. From years ago. A hallway in Macau, a voice in a radio earpiece, a briefcase exchange that never should have happened. She wondered if he would recognize her. Probably not. Not with bleach on her gloves and a mop in her hands. She let the group pass. One of the aides turned his head briefly, made eye contact. She blinked slowly, neutral, forgettable, then kept walking. Down the hallway, the meeting room doors unlocked with a heavy mechanical clang. General Rourke stood waiting. Behind him, Captain Mercer whispered something into his ear. Rourke didn't move, just stared at the approaching diplomats like he was about to fall off a cliff. From the side corridor, Lieutenant Raymond stepped forward with a handful of note cards, the tones on his lips awkward and forced. Erica stopped walking. 20 feet from the room, out of view but close enough to hear, she listened. Raymond began to speak. His accent was wrong, his grammar confused. The expression on Minister Zhang's face didn't change, but the advisor beside him, young, sharp with glasses and a perfectly still posture, gave the faintest frown. Erica tilted her head, listening to the intonation. He wasn't just mispronouncing, he was mistranslating. Badly. 2 key words reversed. And phrase suggested political demands instead of protocol. No one in the room noticed yet. But they would. And soon. Erica stepped back into the shadows of the side corridor, her mind racing. Not with panic, with options. She could walk away, just another janitor on an early shift. The chaos wouldn't touch her. She had heard the term manic, but the wrong word in the wrong room, between the wrong people, that could start something no one could walk away from. She looked down at her gloves, then started walking toward the meeting room. Quietly, deliberately. It's invisible, as always, until she chose not to be. General Thomas Rourke hated improvising. Every folder on his desk was color-coded, every meeting rehearsed, every diplomatic variable cataloged and cleared by command weeks in advance. Protocol wasn't a formality to him. It was control, order, power wrapped in procedure. Now that power was unraveling fast. He stood stiffly at the front of the Strategic Operations Conference Room, a sweat line forming under the collar of his pressed uniform. His jaw twitched as Minister Zhang extended a hand with careful diplomacy. The moment was captured by 2 wall-mount surveillance cameras and silently witnessed by the aides flanking both sides. Zhang's handshake was polite, controlled, his face unreadable. Rourke returned it with equal calculation, but behind his eyes, urgency boiled. No translator, and the only Mandarin speaker on base, if you could even call him that, was Lieutenant Josh Raymond, whose last practical experience had been a semester abroad in college and some self-study apps. "Minister Zhang," Rourke said, gesturing to the seat at the center of the polished table, "please have a seat." Raymond stepped forward, hesitating before translating. The syllables caught in his mouth. Too slow, too deliberate, each tone slightly off. Zhang blinked. The advisor beside him whispered something quietly into his ear, and Zhang nodded without expression. Still, his gaze lingered a second too long on Raymond, reading him the way intelligence officers read body language, measuring intent, not content. Captain Mercer stood near the back of the room, gripping his tablet like a defibrillator. His eyes flicked to Rourke's every 5 seconds. The protocol binders they'd rehearsed for weeks, useless. The national flags were mismatched on screen. Even the nameplates were for the wrong delegation. And all of this was happening under the watchful eyes of the Secretary of Defense, Harold Emery, who watched from a high-sensity satellite feed, in D-seat audio synced. Visual stabilized, pressure mounting. 20 minutes. 20 minutes ago they thought this summit was 5 days away. Now the plane had landed early, motorcades swept through security, and the Chinese diplomats were seated around the table with no warning, no prep, no legal safeguards. Rourke had made the call, let them in, better than appearing uncooperative. But now, seated at a table where every word could start or end a war, he was beginning to feel the weight of that decision. The advisor? Lin Chiao. Thin-rimmed glasses, black suit, dark eyes that missed nothing, watched Raymond like he was a wiretap disguised as a human being. The way she tilted her head slightly with every translated phrase revealed it. She was parsing each syllable for inconsistencies. She knew Mandarin wasn't his first, or second, language. She knew he was struggling. She just hadn't decided whether to exploit it yet. Erica Murphy, 3 hallways away, moved like time didn't apply to her. She glided past checkpoints without being stopped, down corridors no one thought to secure. The cart she pushed made the faintest creak at the wheel, but the rest of her was silence incarnate. She reached the observation deck above the operations wing, where one-way glass gave a panoramic view of the chamber below. From this angle she could see the full table. Rourke seated at the head, Zhang across from him, aides and analysts like chess pieces around the sides. She removed a microfiber cloth from her cart, began polishing the railing slowly, deliberately, as though she had all the time in the world. But her eyes never left the delegation. The phrases drifting up through the vent beneath her were a mess. Incorrect tonal pairing, passive constructs turned aggressive. The wrong modifier could make joint cooperation sound like military alignment. She didn't flinch. She just listened, noted, calculated. Raymond, unaware of the linguistic minefield he was constructing, continued his halting translation as Rourke leaned into a line about naval passage agreements in shared waters. That was the moment Erica's breath caught. Raymond misread the inflection on the word joint, replacing it with a similar-sounding Mandarin term for sovereign. The difference was microscopic in sound, but monumental in implication. Zhang's brow arched. Lin Qiao's eyes narrowed. A full second of silence followed. Then two. Inside the room, no one moved. Outside the room, Mercer's fingers danced on his tablet, frantically typing into the secure chat thread for Emery's team. One of the analysts in D.C. flagged the mistranslation. They'd caught it, but too late. The delegation already heard it live. Zhang said something quietly in Mandarin to his aide. Lin Qiao did not translate. That was not protocol. Rourke noticed. His lip twitched. "Lieutenant," he said, his voice too tight, "is there a reason nothing's being translated right now?" Raymond swallowed hard. "Sir, I believe Minister Zhang made a private remark." "That so?" Rourke's voice dropped lower. "Are you sure it wasn't a diplomatic response to your last mistake?" Raymond opened his mouth, closed it. Sweat dotted his temple. In the observation deck, Erica turned away from the glass and quietly opened her cart. Beneath the towels and disinfectant bottles, nestled between a roll of paper bags and an unlabeled spray bottle, sat a folded cloth pouch. She reached for it, unrolled it slowly. Inside, a set of earpieces and a compact handheld mic, standard issue comms, obsolete to most, but not to her. She inserted one earpiece. Below, Zhang adjusted his position slightly in his chair. Then he spoke again, slowly, carefully, each word measured. Erica closed her eyes and listened. His phrasing was layered, intentionally ambiguous, diplomatic but edged, the kind of sentence that could mean three different things depending on intonation. The kind of sentence that could trigger a response or a reckoning. Raymond repeated the phrase but softened it, unknowingly altering the intent. Lin Qiao smiled faintly. That smile wasn't friendly. It was bait. Rourke didn't catch it. Neither did Mercer. But Erica did. The smile wasn't about what had been said. It was about what hadn't been. Erica opened her cart's lower drawer, extracted a small notepad, and scribbled a few characters down in Mandarin. 4 words. Then she folded the page and pocketed it. This wasn't about translation anymore. This was about intent. She took one last glance at the scene below, where General Rourke sat one poorly chosen phrase away from a diplomatic incident, and made her decision. Not yet. Not in that room. But soon. She turned and walked away from the observation deck, her earpiece still live. She had roughly 6 minutes before the conversation crossed a point of no return. 6 minutes to intercept. 6 minutes before someone said something they couldn't take back. And not a single person in that room knew how close they were to lighting a match in a room full of fuel. She moved faster now. Rushing, calculated, like someone who knew every corner of the building, every glitch in the locks, every camera rotation down to the second. She passed the operations log station, where Sergeant Nina Cortez sat sipping lukewarm coffee. Erica nodded politely, got nothing back. Not that she expected it. Nina barely looked up from her screen, but she should have. Because Erica wasn't pushing a janitor cart anymore. She was on her way to rewrite the next 5 minutes of history, and no one had even noticed her leave. Captain Daniel Mercer knew the signs of a downward spiral. He'd seen it in junior officers who got flustered during live drills, and in contractors trying to fake their way through security protocol. But this was worse. He could practically hear the screws coming loose on the whole summit, and he had the unenviable job of trying to hold it together with nothing but a tablet, a busted interpreter, and a general whose patience was hitting its limit. From his position along the wall, Mercer scanned the room. Minister Zhang remained unreadable, sitting with that impossibly still posture, fingers folded. His lead advisor, Lin Qiao, scribbled notes that Mercer suspected weren't notes at all. More likely assessments, tactical ones. The way she occasionally glanced at Rourke wasn't polite curiosity, it was analysis, measuring every delay, every misstep. Mercer shot a look at Lieutenant Raymond, who had now shifted to flipping through printed crib notes, whispering pronunciation under his breath. One of the pages trembled in his hand. Mercer grimaced. It was only a matter of time before someone said something that would take 3 international calls and 4 apologies to undo. He tapped a quick message to Rourke's private channel on the tablet. "Sir, let me attempt to delay with refreshments, redirect with defense cooperation." Rourke didn't respond. His jaw was clenched, his hands flat on the table. He was watching Raymond like a surgeon watches an intern holding a scalpel over a beating heart. Erica Murphy slipped past the outer checkpoint unnoticed. The interior door leading to the side briefing room required a badge. She used hers, timing the scan with a nearby officer's return from the coffee station. She followed close behind, holding a stack of folded mop heads in one hand and an out-of-service placard in the other. No one looked twice. Her gloves still smelled faintly of bleach. She had 30 seconds before someone realized she didn't belong in this wing, at least not during a diplomatic summit. 30 seconds was more than enough. Inside the side briefing room, she moved straight to the secure comm panel and plugged in her earpiece mic. The system blinked red. She entered a code, one that shouldn't have worked. It turned green. Her voice was quiet, steady, controlled. "Override comm, patch live feed into tactical prep room. Earpiece only." The screen confirmed the command. The conversation from the main chamber now filtered into her ear, clean and direct, no distortion, no background noise, just Mandarin, layered, nuanced, formal, but laced with implications that the American team hadn't picked up on. Zhang was floating the idea of regional logistics cooperation, a move that, if accepted too broadly, could be interpreted as the U.S. conceding certain East Pacific control zones. Raymond, fumbling, attempted to reflect positivity and partnership in his reply. Instead, he used the word for shared dominion. Erica didn't curse. She didn't flinch. She simply pulled a notepad from her jacket pocket, wrote one line, and walked out of the briefing room. She had 5 minutes left before the wrong document got signed or the wrong nod got interpreted as consent. Outside the chamber, Sergeant Nina Cortez finally noticed her. "You're not assigned to this quadrant," Cortez said flatly, setting her coffee down. Erica stopped. Her expression didn't change. She just gave a slow blink, neutral and unreadable. "Supply requisition. Disinfectant override for Blue Zone spill response. Commander Park's orders." Cortez raised an eyebrow. Blue Zone doesn't have spill incidents during summit clearance. Erica paused for a breath, then pulled out a folded requisition form. It was dated, stamped, and signed. Cortez took it, read it once, then twice. "Where's Park?" she asked. "Locker bay, waiting on swap confirmation." Erica replied calmly. "I'm just here to reset the observation filter." Minister Zhang's security detail flagged reflective glass anomalies. Cortez hesitated. The jargon was right. The form was real. She didn't know this janitor's name, but then again, how many people did she really know on a base with over 1,400 personnel? Cortez waved her through. Erica nodded, stepped past, and headed toward the rear entrance to the main chamber, the one used by security during emergency evacuations. It had its own biometric pad, and she didn't have the thumbprint clearance for it. But she didn't need it. She waited until one of the staff aides, a tall logistics officer with a coffee stain on his sleeve, approached. She leaned casually against the wall near the lock, then dropped her mop handle. It clattered loudly. He instinctively reached to help, and when he did, she timed her step perfectly behind him, slid into his clearance bubble, and slipped through the door as it clicked open. She was inside. The room was silent except for Zhang's voice, low and precise, mid-sentence. He was laying out a mutual logistics framework that was technically harmless, but embedded with phrasing that could be used as political leverage later. In other words, diplomatic chess. General Rourke was nodding. Raymond was still translating. Badly. Erica walked in slowly, calm, in uniform, gloves still on, head slightly bowed. She walked directly to the front row of seating reserved for civilian contractors and paused. No one stopped her. Why would they? She was still just a janitor. Until she wasn't. Minister Zhang turned his head. His eyes met hers. There was a flicker of something, hesitation, recognition, something half-formed. She bowed slightly, then said 4 words in Mandarin. Permission to clarify translation? Everyone froze. Raymond looked up like he'd heard a ghost. Lin Qiao blinked, her mouth parting just a fraction. General Rourke stiffened. What the hell? But Zhang smiled. Faint. Controlled. He spoke. I was wondering when you'd speak, Miss Murphy. Not janitor, not civilian, not miss. He said her full name, her real one. The room tilted. Rourke stood. You know her? Zhang folded his hands. Once, a long time ago, but not in this uniform. Erica removed her glove. The skin beneath it bore the faint outline of an old surgical scar, a scar few people alive would remember, but one that meant something in certain circles. She turned to Rourke. Sir, Lieutenant Raymond's translations have inadvertently offered territorial concessions that do not reflect U.S. policy. I can correct the record. Now, quietly. Rourke stared at her like he was trying to solve a puzzle with no edge pieces. Raymond sat down, speechless. Minister Zhang simply waited. Lin Qiao tilted her head and narrowed her eyes. Erica stepped forward and began to speak. Fluently. Not just grammatically. Fluently. Her Mandarin was native level, but more than that, calibrated. Inflected like someone trained to suggest without stating, to offer without committing, to speak 2 meanings in 1 sentence, and know which would be heard. She navigated the corrections with precision, recasting earlier phrases, softening implications, clarifying shared as cooperative, shifting dominion to support, all without making it obvious that anything had gone wrong. Minister Zhang allowed it. Lin Qiao didn't interrupt, and the room, once fraying at the edges, began to realign. When she finished, Erica turned to Rourke. I recommend we pause for refreshments, sir. Allow both sides to reconfirm language alignment in the draft agreement. Rourke didn't speak right away, but eventually he nodded once. Mercer signaled to catering staff. The door opened, and as the delegation stood, quietly stepping into the side lounge, General Rourke stepped toward Erica. You want to explain who you are? He muttered. Erica looked at him evenly. I was assigned to mop the floors. Then she turned and followed Minister Zhang into the side room. And the doors shut behind her. The soundproof doors hissed closed behind them, sealing off the murmurs of confusion still simmering in the main conference chamber. Inside the adjoining diplomatic lounge, the lights were softer. The chairs were arranged in precise semicircles, a table set with carafes of tea, coffee, and untouched lemon water. Everything about the space was meant to be calming, neutral, temporary. Erica stood at the edge of the room, neither among the Americans nor the Chinese delegation. She clasped her gloved hands in front of her, unmoving. Minister Zhang didn't sit. He stood near the far corner, examining a painting on the wall with detached interest. It was a framed depiction of the Rocky Mountains, pale brush strokes and wind-swept ridgelines, the kind of generic art selected by a contracting firm with no emotional investment. Zhang's eyes barely moved. You know, he said without looking back, when we last met you weren't wearing state-issued work boots. Erica didn't answer immediately. He turned slowly, the weight of the room shifting with him. I recall something about Vienna, a cafe, 2 briefcases that looked the same. One didn't have blueprints. That's not my name anymore, she said, voice low. No, Jean replied. But the walk is the same. From behind, Lin Xiao approached. Her steps were silent, but her presence cut through the quiet like piano wire. She stood to Zhang's left and folded her arms. Your people pulled her from the field, Lin said. I didn't expect her to end up pushing cleaning carts. She didn't end up anywhere, Zhang said, finally facing Erica directly. She chose. Erica's jaw tightened slightly. I didn't choose this, she replied, but I chose not to die. Lin narrowed her eyes. You're not here by accident. No, Erica said. But I'm not here for you, either. That was true. She hadn't planned to be near this delegation, hadn't expected this base to be the intersection point. But when the air traffic report came through on the staff terminal, and the tail number matched a diplomatic aircraft from Beijing, she'd known. It was the same unit Zhang always used. Low profile, high leverage. Behind her, General Rourke entered the lounge with deliberate steps. Captain Mercer followed closely, a folder under one arm, a guarded expression on his face. Rourke approached without preamble. I want to know exactly what just happened. Zhang smiled faintly. You were almost forced to explain a treaty clause you hadn't agreed to yet. I wasn't talking to you, Rourke said, barely veiling his irritation. Erica turned to face him. The lieutenant's translation included key errors. Some of them would have implied sovereignty cessions. I couldn't let that pass. You couldn't. Rourke stepped closer. You're a janitor. You have no authority. No, she said, but I have fluency, tactical assessment training, and a history with some of your guests. Mercer winced, but Zhang chuckled softly. General, he said, you should be thanking her. If she hadn't corrected your officer's mistakes, I would have been obligated to report your informal concessions to my superiors. That would have shifted this entire relationship for years. I'm not interested in lectures, Rourke snapped. Zhang's voice cooled. Then be interested in precision. Rourke exhaled slowly, rubbing his hand over his forehead. He turned to Erica. You want to explain how a floor tech has clearances to walk through 3 security layers and speak fluent Mandarin with a diplomat? No one checks janitors, she said. They assume we don't understand. Mercer's tablet chimed. He checked the screen, frowned. Sir, he said cautiously, Defense Command has flagged her personnel file. Flagged it how? It's not in our system. Rourke's jaw set. Excuse me? Mercer rotated the screen. Her file's there, but it's shadow-tagged. External override, not internal records. Someone high up embedded a ghost protocol. It's locked. Rourke turned his stare back to Erica. What were you? She didn't blink. Field linguist, Tier 3 operative, deep insertion capacity. Who trained you? Joint task with Naval Intel and State. How they can use exercise. Are you here now? Erica's eyes flicked toward the glass panel of the door. Because they needed me to disappear. And this is a very good place to disappear. The room went still. Lin Xiao stepped forward, finally breaking her silence. Why intervene now, after all this time? Erica's reply was steady. Because I've cleaned the hallways where decisions are made. I've heard enough to know when silence causes damage. Zhang looked almost amused. So you swept until you found a mistake. I swept until someone else was about to make one, she corrected. Rourke folded his arms. You compromise an active diplomatic exchange. I preserved it, she shot back. Sir. He paused, staring hard at her, but she didn't flinch. Eventually he turned away. Mercer, he said, Send the draft agreement back to legal, every word, especially the translated ones. I want new language by this afternoon." "Yes, sir." Lin glanced at Zhang. "They'll bury her after this," she said in Mandarin, not realizing Erica's earpiece was still live. "She is already buried," Zhang replied, also in Mandarin. "They just don't know it yet." Erica caught it, memorized it, filed it away. She stepped back into the periphery of the room. The tea on the table remained untouched. The tension hadn't lifted. It had just mutated, shifted from open panic to internal recalibration. From the corner of the room, General Rourke suddenly spoke. "Mercy." She turned. "I don't like secrets in my command." "Then you're in the wrong job," she said quietly. He stared at her, then gave the faintest nod. Not of agreement, but of understanding. The kind people give when they've decided not to ask a question they know won't help them sleep. Zhang turned toward her one last time before leaving. "You were always good at this," he said. "I'm not doing it anymore." "No," he said. "You just did." Then the Chinese delegation filed out, coats buttoned, briefcases secured, whispers already beginning in Mandarin as they exited into the corridor. Mercer followed Rourke out, tapping notes furiously onto his tablet, and Erica remained alone for a moment, standing next to a table of untouched drinks and diplomatic theater. She looked down at her gloved hands. One was trembling. She hadn't noticed. Erica Murphy sat on the concrete steps behind the supply bay, elbows on her knees, a bottle of warm water dangling from one hand. She'd been out here for nearly 10 minutes, though no one had come looking for her. Not yet. Not the general, not Mercer, not even base security. That was the gift of being invisible. When you stepped out of sight, you stayed that way. The breeze smelled like ozone and exhaust from the runway half a mile off. She could hear the faint whir of distant helicopters and the rhythmic beep of a forklift reversing near the cargo docks. Everything was moving forward just like it always did, and yet the base had changed. Subtly. Permanently. Because she'd spoken. Not just spoken. Intervened. Exposed herself. Put her name back into circulation in rooms where names like hers weren't supposed to exist anymore. She rubbed the back of her neck. Her skin itched. It always did after things like this. Her old handler used to call it operational ghost skin. The residue of being something you aren't for too long. The body remembers. The heavy door behind her clicked. She didn't turn around. "I figured you'd be out here," said a voice she recognized. Calm, steady, measured. Captain Mercer. She took a sip from the water bottle. "Let me guess. I'm in trouble." "No." He walked down 2 steps and sat beside her. "Not officially." "But unofficially?" He tilted his head. "Let's just say there's confusion. Questions above my pay grade. Yours too, apparently." They sat in silence for a moment. "I thought you were logistics," he finally said. "The requisition orders, the MOP protocols. You even submitted the quarterly supply chain reports in triplicate." "Old habits," she said. "Cover identity's only good if you learn to live inside it." Mercer looked over at her. "Why now?" She didn't answer right away. He waited. "There's something about silence that can become a drug," she said finally. "If no one asks who you are, you get used to not answering. You start to forget you ever spoke." She glanced at him. But today, someone was going to say the wrong thing, in the wrong room, and people I'd never meet were going to pay for it. "Like you've seen before." Her jaw tightened. Mercer leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Look, I'm not here to run debrief, but General Rourke isn't going to let this go. And when defense gets wind of what just happened, and they will, they're going to want answers. You'll need someone to explain you before someone else rewrites you." Erica stared out across the loading lot. "I'm not here to be explained," she said. I'm here because I was told I'd never have to be anyone again. Mercer looked at her carefully. Who told you that? She didn't answer. From the other side of the bay, a vehicle door slammed. Footsteps. Not fast, not loud, measured. Roic. Erica stood up before he even turned the corner. You're not easy to track, the general said. At practice. He looked tired. Not physically. Strategically. The kind of exhaustion that came from realizing how little you knew about the chessboard you'd been standing on. Tell me something, he said. You ever want back in? No, he might not. Because I don't want to be a tool again? He crossed his arms. You were a weapon. Same difference, she said. Only difference between a tool and a weapon is what side of the table you're sitting on. He took a breath. You do realize what you pulled off in that room has already hit D.C. Figured. And you know what happens next. I disappear, she said, again. He didn't confirm it. He didn't need to. You didn't just translate, he said. You shifted the temperature of the room. You redefined terms in real time, redirected the discussion, repositioned a failing negotiation, and made Minister Zhang walk out calm instead of calculating. That's not linguistics. That's fieldcraft. Erica said nothing. You spoke like an agent, he added. I didn't want to. But you did. She turned away from him, walking a few feet toward the edge of the concrete path. Do you know what it's like to be trained to say one thing that sounds like another, to lie for peace, to misdirect for survival, to use your voice as a weapon until you forget what it feels like to speak as a person? Rourke didn't reply. I used to believe in the mission, she said, until the mission started changing every time a new person gave it a name. She heard him shift slightly behind her. I don't want your thanks, she added. Good, he said, because I'm not offering it. I'm offering you a question. She turned slowly. What happens the next time, he asked, when someone else is in your position and they don't speak up, when a mistake like that turns into policy? That's not my responsibility anymore. Maybe not, he said, but you proved today you still care. That landed harder than she expected. Captain Mercer's filing an internal security review, Rourke continued. Your clearance logs will show up on that report. Normally, that's a termination risk. I understand. But I'm going to endorse you. She blinked. What? I'm not going to let Washington decide what happens to you from 1,000 miles away. You saved us today. More than you know. Erica studied him, searching for the angle. You want something, she said. He nodded. I want you to stay. On base, in plain sight, but this time with a title. I already have one. Janitor. He gave a humorless chuckle. Not anymore. She narrowed her eyes. What title? Liaison. Civilian language and intel support. You won't have to suit up. Just be where we can see you. Erica folded her arms. And if I say no? Then you walk. I won't stop you. But if you do, I guarantee someone else will find you first. That wasn't a threat. It was a truth. Someone, somewhere, had already typed her name back into the system. Her silence had expired. Mercer stood from the steps, approaching slowly. We don't want an agent, Erica. We just want someone who can see what others can't, and say something when it matters. She looked at both men, then down at her gloves. She pulled them off slowly. For the first time in years, she felt the air on her skin while wearing a name someone else hadn't given her. She said nothing, but she didn't walk away either, and Rourke knew that was her answer. The conference room had been scrubbed clean of its tension. Flags were stowed, the translator's podium stood vacant, the coffee urns had been wheeled away. A quiet stillness returned to the room. Functional silence, the kind meant to conceal how close everything had come to unraveling just hours earlier. but Erica Murphy could still feel the echoes. She sat alone in the empty chamber, the same place she'd stood as a shadow on the wall that morning. Now she sat at the long table, at the very seat where Minister Zhang had conducted his measured diplomacy. A folder lay open in front of her, blank pages except for the seal stamped in the top corner. Confidential, internal review. She hadn't opened it. She didn't need to. She could guess what it contained: logs, timelines, partial transcripts, her name cross-referenced against surveillance footage, her record, or what was left of it, stripped bare and dissected by someone in a room with thicker doors and higher clearances than this one. She traced the corner of the folder with one finger. The door opened behind her and Lieutenant Josh Raymond stepped in hesitantly, carrying a tablet against his chest like a shield. His uniform was neater than it had been that morning, but his eyes still held the embarrassed haze of someone who knew he'd failed and had no one to blame but himself. "I was told you were in here," he said quietly. "I don't hide well anymore," she replied. He shifted on his feet. "Can I sit?" "Sit?" She gestured to the chair across from her. He slid into it, the leather creaking faintly beneath him. For a moment he just sat, tablet in his lap, hands folded. Then he exhaled. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I shouldn't have been in that room. I thought I could handle it. But I froze." Erica studied him. She didn't see arrogance, just a young man with too much pressure and not enough readiness. "Most people don't know they're not ready until it's too late," she said. "I thought my degree would be enough." "It's not about the degree," she replied. "It's about the gap between knowing what a word means and knowing when not to say it." He nodded. "When I saw you speak like that, He shook his head. "You weren't translating. You were steering, like you already knew the turns before they came." She offered the faintest smile. "That's the job." Raymond leaned forward. "What job? Who were you?" She hesitated. "Then, I was called field support. That's what they put on my file. But really, I was deployed to fill in the cracks. Linguistics, signals, non-verbal analysis. When high-value assets needed to understand more than words, when intent was buried in gesture or silence, they sent me." Raymond's mouth parted. "Like behavioral profiling?" "Like survival translation," she said. "Say the wrong thing, someone dies. Mishear a phrase, and a 6-month operation falls apart." He absorbed that in silence. "Why might you stop?" he asked. She looked at him for a long moment. "I was told to." "You got pulled?" "I got ghosted," she said, her voice flat. "One day I was cleared into field reports. The next day my credentials didn't work. My handler changed, my stipend stopped. And when I called Langley, the number didn't exist anymore." Raymond blinked. "Why?" "I was too close to something I wasn't supposed to hear." He stiffened slightly. She leaned back. "It happens more often than people think. One mistake, one overheard conversation. Sometimes you're not the asset anymore. You're the liability." "So you went into hiding?" She gave a slight nod. "But not underground. I didn't want to run. I wanted to be somewhere where no one asked questions. And that worked. It worked until today." The silence between them stretched out. Then Raymond offered her the tablet. "They asked me to give this to you." She hesitated before taking it. The screen lit up with a classified notice. "Level 3 Protocol Trigger Internal Security Audit." A file opened. She scrolled. There, beneath layers of redacted text, was her operational record, or what had been pulled together from half-erased files. Her early training at Monterey. Language proficiency scores. Mission notations. Some redacted, some partially exposed. One line caught her eye. "Asset retired after unauthorized proximity to classified debrief, Macau Intercept 2017. Raymond leaned forward. They don't say it, but that file's getting attention. Big attention. And how big? Secretary Emery's staff submitted a formal request to transfer your security status into provisional reinstatement. She arched an eyebrow. You mean they want to wake the ghost? Raymond smiled faintly. Something like that. Erica locked the tablet and slid it back. I don't want a clearance, she said. I think they know that, he replied. But they also know you're not the kind of person who walks away when something matters. She looked at him. Is that supposed to be a compliment? He laughed softly. It's supposed to be a warning. The door opened again. This time Sergeant Nina Cortez stepped in. She gave Raymond a nod, then looked at Erica with narrowed eyes. I ran your movement logs, she said without preamble. Erica didn't respond. You ghosted 4 camera sweeps, bypassed 2 locked doors, and got into a restricted observation deck with no escort. That's not janitorial routing. Raymond stiffened. But Erica met Cortez's stare. You got something to report? Erica asked. Cortez paused, then slowly shook her head. No. Just wanted to see if you'd flinch. Erica didn't. Cortez stepped forward, dropped a folded slip of paper onto the table. From the Chinese delegation, hand-delivered by one of their aides. Erica unfolded it. The handwriting was clean, deliberate. You still play your part well. Beneath it, a second line in Mandarin. There is more coming. Erica folded the note, tucked it into her pocket. She didn't show fear, but she felt something stir. This wasn't over. It was just the next chapter. It was nearly midnight when Erica walked the long, empty corridor outside the command wing, her boots echoing softly against the tile. The base had quieted. Day shift personnel were long gone, night watch rotations humming quietly in their routines. Overhead, the lights dimmed to their low power cycle, casting long shadows across the security doors and bulletin boards lined with procedural memos. In her hand, she held the keycard General Rourke had personally delivered that evening. No escort, no security. Just a quiet knock at her quarters, followed by a single envelope and the barest nod. No speech, no pressure, just an understanding she had a choice. The keycard wasn't just access. It was acknowledgement. She reached the far end of the hallway where a door marked Liaison, Intel Support, Civilian, blinked softly with a green access light. She didn't swipe the card. Not yet. Instead, she leaned against the wall beside it, closing her eyes. For the first time in 5 years, she wasn't hiding. There was no need to memorize janitorial schedules or sneak through blind spots. No shadow work. No whispering Mandarin into vents or slipping notes under doors. She was allowed to be known now. Not fully, but enough. It was terrifying, and yet she felt lighter than she had in years. From down the hall, someone approached. Quick, but not hurried. Erica looked up to see Captain Mercer coming her way, a canvas messenger bag slung over one shoulder, his tablet under his arm. He smiled when he reached her. I figured I'd find you here. Did you? She asked, amused. Well, he said, either here or outside the commissary, eating vending machine pretzels and not answering your comm. I haven't decided if I'm going in yet. He nodded. Want company while you decide? She didn't say yes, but she didn't stop him from leaning against the wall beside her. They stood like that for a moment, shoulder to shoulder, neither speaking. The silence was comfortable, familiar. They've offered you full reinstatement, he said eventually. Clearance, pay grade, access. I've recalled feeling oppressed. I saw the paperwork, she replied. And I'm not interested in being activated again. I'm not an asset. Not anymore. He glanced at her. They're not trying to make you one. She raised a brow. I mean, not exactly, he added. They're trying something different. A quiet role. You're not on any task force. You're not being deployed. You'd be here, on base, providing insight when things get tangled, until they don't need me quiet anymore. They need someone who knows when silence is dangerous, he said, echoing her own words back at her. That's rarer than you think. She took a slow breath. I've spent 5 years pushing a mop to avoid being used. You weren't used today, he said gently. You made the call. You stepped in. You saved a diplomatic train wreck and avoided what could have become an international crisis. That wasn't someone using you. That was you owning the moment. She looked at him for a long time. I think you're giving me too much credit. I think you're giving yourself too little. They stood in silence again, watching a pair of airmen pass down the far corridor with a clipboard and tired smiles. Mercer turned toward her. You want to see it? She what? The space, your new office. Erica hesitated, then slowly nodded. He stepped to the panel and swiped his own card. The door slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss, revealing a compact room, lit by warm overhead lights and the glow of a low computer terminal. Inside there was a desk, a wall of secure monitors, 2 chairs, a potted plant in the corner. And hanging on the far wall, neatly framed, was a photograph. Not of Erica, not of any mission. It was the conference room from that day. Minister Zhang seated, Rourke at the far end, Raymond mid-sentence, and in the shadows near the edge of the photo half-cropped, barely visible, stood Erica, a mop in hand, her head slightly turned. You kept surveillance footage? She asked. Mercer grinned. Technically it was flagged for evidence, but someone in command decided to print this frame. To remind people not to underestimate the quietest person in the room. She stepped inside slowly. He walked over to the desk and picked up a closed folder resting on the keyboard. By the way, he said, handing it to her, the delegation sent something through diplomatic channels this afternoon. She opened it. Inside was a sealed note, handwritten in Mandarin. It read, "The halls we sweep hide louder secrets than the rooms we guard. When the world forgets your name, remember. Some of us remember everything." It was signed Zhang Wei. She stared at the paper for a long moment, then closed the folder. When she looked up, Mercer was watching her. "Still not interested in being an agent?" he asked, a trace of teasing in his tone. She smiled. "I'm interested in helping people avoid mistakes. If that means wearing a badge again instead of a name tag, fine. But I'm not going back into the field. I'm done being someone else." He nodded. "Then be yourself. That's more than enough." He stepped forward and placed the folder neatly on the desk. Then, for the first time, she sat in the chair behind it. The monitors came to life. A soft tone confirmed system sync. "Welcome, Murphy," the screen read. Below it, "Liaison, activate. Observate appropriate engaged." She leaned back, taking it all in. Outside, dawn was beginning to break. Light touched the edges of the base through the long observation windows. The mess hall would open in half an hour. The early shift would shuffle in, yawning and unaware of how close things had come to disaster just a day before. And Erica would be here. Not as a ghost, not as a janitor, not as herself. Finally seen, finally heard, and never underestimated again.